Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. I'm Kristin, and I'm joined by my co-host and recovering government employee, Ron Ward. Ron, you just got back from Ohio, and you're going to have to break down why you're a recovering government employee.
Two quick things. Shout out to Northern Ohio, U.S. District Court, U.S. Probation.
Woo-woo.
I was in Canfield, which I mistakenly called Camden or something. I don't remember, but I had to make a correction.
While
I
you were
was
training?
training. It was on my post, my social media post.
All right. Got it.
So recovering academy director, I did that a little tongue in cheek, but it is true. Like, I carried two phones my entire career. You had to be on all the time. And if you were more than 15 minutes late, a class would get canceled. Because I was an instructor. We talk a lot about academy director, but I was an instructor for a few years. So everything is clockwork when you run an academy. So I still run my company the same way. I'm always on time. I'm always early. Kristin knows that.
Ron will be there.
I'm recovering a little bit from that because I don't.
Do you get triggered?
The only time, and it's getting better, is when phones buzz. Like if they're laying on a table. I've been at people's house talking to them, and I said, "I'm sorry." Like watching a movie. I'm sorry. Can you move the phone or put it on silent? That does trigger me just a little, but I'm okay, people. I'm okay.
You're doing all right?
How are you doing?
How many years has it been? Wait, when did you retire? How many years ago? Okay, all right. Getting some time under your belt.
Yeah. And was that a nice way of saying I'm long in the tooth?
No, I'm just saying, at this point, maybe the phone vibrations aren't triggering you as much as they once did.
By the time this airs, you will have another trip around the sun, correct?
No, this one airs before
It does?
that. Yeah, that's
next
that's
week. Right.
But
that's right.
I will be turning 44 July 1st. And I hear that's the ugly button, 44 and 60.
I was good looking until that.
I'm working really hard at the gym. I'm like, I will not fall victim to this.
I got to remember that. I'm going to be in Texas. I'm really excited. I trained their managers in Austin, but now it's the whole staff, and it's a large group, and I'm really excited to go and present to non-managers for a change.
Yes. Are these like middle managers or literally individual contributors?
These are U.S. probation and pretrial services officers.
Okay.
And when I was there before, it was for supervisor, assistant deputy chiefs, chiefs, that kind of thing. So
that is a very different audience, but I know you thrive with an audience, especially a diverse audience, is like diverse in, obviously in ways of thought and the way they interact and what their job is. So that'll be really cool.
Kristin, I am really proud that I'm going to bring, I hope, cutting edge. They may think they're getting the old retired guy, but I stay on the cutting edge, and I help Kristin with, I told her I was transgenerational, that I help her with Gen Z.
That triggers me. I'm triggered.
I help her with the Gen Z stuff. That's cap. That's not a lie.
Yeah,
anyway.
Well, I have an alpha, my son's alpha generation. So I'm learning that whole situation. That is a wild
I do
generation,
give them credit. They have really altered the English language.
They have. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I was going to try to pull something out of my pocket that he says, but nothing came to me. So I'll leave that there. But today we are dragging a body into the spotlight, Ron, and that body is integrity. And it's not sleeping. It's not bruised. It's nearly dead. It's on life support. And we're about to show you who committed attempted murder.
Everybody loves true crime podcasts, so this is true crime on integrity. The murder was not subtle. It was sloppy, loud, fully televised. And this isn't about one bad actor. This is about a culture of decay, a boardroom of yes men, a government of spin artists, also a government with spending out of control with no thought about the actual people who pay taxes. And unfortunately, due to all the social media, due to the mainstream media, all of this stuff, I believe that our public has become numb, just numb.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that was absolutely intentional, right? We even think about true crime and everything. The kids play video games and it's kill this, right? It's intentional for us to not see that as a big deal, right? So it doesn't even like register. And, today leaders lie with confidence and they apologize with disclaimers and they call it a strategy. And integrity, it isn't rare. It's not just rare at this point. It's mocked. So if you hold your ground, you're called rigid. I've experienced that. If you tell the truth, you're off brand. Experienced that also. And if you refuse to compromise, you're replaced, quite frankly.
Yeah, and we live in a culture about subs subscribers, followers, likes, all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's so easy. The first time that I really got introduced to the marketing world, someone who was heavily into marketing began to tell me ways to twist the truth and get people to purchase. And I'll be honest with you, Kristin, in our coaching, because I teach body language, because we teach proper phrasing and things like that, I have people say, well, that's really not me. And I said, well, the reason you're signed up for coaching, we're going to get the best version of you. We're not being dishonest. We're just going to give you extra tools in your tool chest. But integrity doesn't get applause. As a matter of fact, if Kristin and I right now, everybody knows about clickbait. People try to get you to click. If we literally called this podcast Integrity, we would probably get 3 clicks because it's not popular. It doesn't sell. So
it's not sexy.
Doesn't get applause. It probably gets you audited. Yeah. Because you'll be, not sensitive enough. You'll be labeled difficult. And, but the thing is, the real reason people ditch integrity, it's because it forces them to admit that they're not what they pretend to be. True, genuine people, they really do get imposter syndrome because they're humble. But this is the opposite. Right. This is intentional imposter syndrome when you're injecting it. And it's a different story. No one likes accountability in our culture today.
Right. Oh, it's so true. And it is difficult to be someone, I know you're wired like me, where I hold people accountable. And I'm talking about family members, friends, like I hold myself accountable. And most people can't face that, right? They just can't handle it. I know we're going to get into the psychology of the sellout. And Ron, because you love psychology so much, why don't you kick us off with that?
I would love to. We could do the whole podcast on this. But first is in Maslow's hierarchy, safety is always a concern, but self-preservation falls in those lines. And everyone has a self-preservation. If you don't think you do, you look at someone messing with a mother's child. This goes in the animal kingdom up to human beings, and you'll find out there's a real self-preservation instinct. People will fight that have never fought before. So under pressure, even the good ones will pivot to survival mode. They protect their image, their power, their paycheck. But the problem is the self-preservation is about the image they built for themselves, not the true person.
Right.
So they're going to protect their image. They're going to protect their brand. They're going to do whatever it takes so that they can keep their influence.
Yeah, it's true. And, the fact that you bring that up, it really hits close to home, because I think about like when we're sitting in church, right? And God forbid there's something that took place in Michigan recently, right? You have an active shooter. I think about how I would lay on top of my kids, right? Like literally these situations run through my head. But the funny thing with that is I generally, when there's something like when I'm faced with fear, like I ran a bank and the entire bank was like, had power lines fall on it and everything was like, and I literally thought we were going to die. I ditched my entire team and I was ready just to bail. Right. Like, so I generally, it's like, what is it? Flight. What is that?
Flight. But there's more to that. I'm going to be doing some posts on it in the near future.
Okay. I think that's really cool, because I definitely am flight. Like I take off, and I know that about myself. Like I've been in high pressure situations and I'm not that brave person that's going to protect strangers. Okay. Like that's just how it is. But when it comes to my children, I will lay my body as a shield on top of theirs and take whatever I need to take to protect them. So there is that's those instincts that are there. But yeah, I'm curious what your posts are going to be about.
I'll give a little, I'll bait the hook here.
Yeah.
There's
right.
Physiological factors to fear, and there's more to it. We always say fight or flight, but there's really fawn and faint. People have, there are people who are afraid, and this happens even in SA situations, and then the women get blasted.
What is that?
Sexual assault.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm not up on that. Okay.
So what happens is a woman might go along with everything, even brag on the person to survive. That's called fawning. Okay. And then, of course, they get in court and they're like, hey, you liked it. So, but it is a physiological response to fear. Some people faint or means they just black out. So there's more to it. There's more steps. But the reason that our military is so strong, and we did this in law enforcement, is it's called stress inoculation. We put officers in stressful situations to help them deal with the adrenaline dump. All the blood rushes from the head, you get tunnel vision, auditory exclusion. All these things happen. Have you ever been in a car accident or something and your mind plays it back in slow motion? That's because you got that adrenaline dump, and it really distorts the viewpoint. That's why we tell officers not to give a statement until one sleep cycle, because your memory is foggy. Most of the time, a superior will show up, collect the weapon, or give it to the investigating agency, and they will speak for the officer, and they say, we will come in and make a statement tomorrow. If that's at all possible, that's what you do. So I could go into a lot more of that.
It's really interesting because I didn't get a 24-hour sleep cycle after I was robbed at gunpoint at the bank. Yeah, but my memory was pretty sharp, so I was able to remember. Yeah,
you sold yourself a little short when you said you weren't brave, because I think that's very brave. But I also know that our brain has a checkout mechanism where, like when I watched an autopsy when I was in the police academy, it was so unreal. It was unreal for me. So in other words, I couldn't, I went through it no problem. And another officer who was encouraging me, because I was nervous about it, he made it 2 minutes and had to leave.
Really?
But some things are unrealistic, and our brain function is behind the incident. So you probably didn't even realize this was real. I was in danger until maybe even weeks later. It was unreal.
I did have some nightmares a few days later. Right after it happened, I started laughing, which is I was like,
I remember you said it, and that's a fear response. Absolutely. That's not odd. That's not odd at all. And again, these are things that get people in trouble later in court hearings, because people don't understand the human condition and human behavior. But a lot of people subscribe to this, Kristin, not only self-preservation, but moral licensing. So in other words, if I do some good things, like if you go back to El Chapo, you look at Mexican drug cartels, he built schools, he built playgrounds. So these people feel like there's a greater good. But what they don't understand, it's so narcissistic, it makes them the judge, the jury, and the sentencer, because they are taking money from people and then they distribute it the way they want, and they feel good about it. So it's a do-gooder to cover bad behavior is basically what that's about.
Oh my goodness. That's very interesting. So I'm looking forward to you diving into that more on social. And if you guys aren't following Ron, he put some really good stuff out there. What's your handle?
Ron_Ward_.
Pretty easy.
Well, here's the funny part, Kristin.
Mine's annoying. I want to change it, but it's too far gone.
As hard as it is for me to give Kristin any credit at all. No, she started reposting my, especially when I was using the dry erase board. And I went from probably 700 or 800 to 2,000 views. Now, everybody doesn't like it, but they're watching it. But here's the funny part, Kristin. My grandson came over, got my dry erase board, and instead of using the markers that are there, he comes over to my desk, finds a permanent, marker and marked all over it. So yesterday I had hydrogen peroxide, alcohol, and all this stuff. And I'm talking to get a 1/4 inch, I had to just rub. I took a break and came back to it.
Oh my gosh.
I should have ordered one, but I've got it cleaned. But that's why I didn't do any. I was going to do some before I leave.
I was wondering where they went.
Well, and also I got the new microphone set up. So it's all ready to go now, but I'm leaving for Texas in the morning. I might be able to get one in. I don't know before I leave. But anyway, when I get back, it's on.
Yeah.
It's on, people.
Yeah. People are really liking those. I liked watching your handwriting, and I had to keep saying people with messy handwriting are generally the smarter ones.
Thank you. Thank you,
That's
Kristin.
what they say. You are so welcome. I was like, dang, Ron, you're really smart.
You know, if I misspell something in training, I always quote Mark Twain. It's a simple man that can't find more than one way to spell a word.
Oh, you know what I found over the years? We would have really high-ranking people from in the bank. They can't spell worth a damn. It's really interesting. Bankers generally don't have the ability to spell. I did not know that about you, though. So once in a great while.
But I do have.
For you.
You're going to have to see my signature. It's been passed down for generations, and I had to memorize, and it's beautiful.
Oh,
so, I get compliments on my signature. I just can't do anything else. So I was being a little self-deprecating. I do pride myself on spelling. I work hard on spelling, but
so you were trying to.
I hate modesty.
Yeah. Humble yourself. Yeah. He's trying to be modest. We should dive into the modern integrity collapses that we alluded to in the very beginning. And talk about some recent integrity failures, and, no nostalgia, just headlines. We can just go over a few, Ron. Do you remember the OpenAI drama? ChatGPT, for those who don't know, that falls under the OpenAI umbrella.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I'm working on a new book, and I discussed the case of Sam Bankman-Fried. He was sentenced to 25 years recently. He was in the FTX scandal. I didn't know Shaq had a lot in that. So there was a lot of big players, and I don't understand why it was slept. It's almost like you heard more from Enron than you do this FTX scandal, but it was way more money. Like,
very interesting. Why do you think do you think because of Enron, it was actually like buildings, right? Like, I think it's different when it's not your traditional brick and mortar.
I think people were confused. I do, but I also think there was big Hollywood celebrities involved, and everybody's embarrassed, and they want to move on. Yeah. He didn't meet the bill of a villain. He's like 20-some-year-old slob, and I don't know.
Yeah, he's the one with the really curly hair, right?
Yeah, and listen, curly hair, sloppy. Yeah, but also keep in mind, he donated a lot to the Democrat Party, and I'm not, I don't want to get political here, but let's face it, if there's so many crimes that seem to just gloss over in the mainstream media, and I think that's part of the reason.
People can absolutely pay to make things go away. And if you don't believe that, you're ignorant. So yeah, that absolutely makes sense on why we would hear that less often than Enron. Gosh, what was that, 20 plus years ago?
Time ago now. So this one is risky for me, Kristin, because Boeing, one of the hubs is in Charleston, one's out in Seattle, as you know.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I know about Seattle. Yeah, I didn't know there's one in Charleston.
And as a matter of fact, I got recruited. Just a funny story quickly for those of you listening. I got recruited by Boeing as an internal investigator. It's kind of like internal affairs. And what you do is you make sure that protocols are being met so that if you get an external audit, you're in compliance, just like the bank would do.
Yeah. Smart.
So it's pretty cool. I haven't retired yet, and I'm being recruited. I think this sounds pretty darn good. And I can make that amount of money plus, my retirement. And the deal was sweet. So it just so happens the guy who recruited me was a former U.S. probation officer. And U.S. probation are really good writers and good investigators. So they started wanting to hire more. They were saying, hey, who's this U.S. probation people? We want more. So that's how they contacted me. We go all the way up, Kristin, and I've answered all these questions. I'm doing all this stuff. And the guy goes, so how long would it take you to move to St. Louis? And I said, St. Louis? What are you talking about? the guy goes, well, the position's in St. Louis. See, the guy that referred me was the former chief U.S. probation officer in St. Louis. But of course, in my mind, Boeing's reaching out. Of course, it's in Charleston. So the whole thing, I said, I apologize. I said, I'm not going to St. Louis, Missouri. So, that was just really funny that that happened. But so that's my Boeing story. And so with Boeing.
So let's talk about that whistleblower.
Boeing had a whistleblower, and his name was John Barnett. And he flagged some real safety issue. Then he turns up dead. I'm not saying anything, people, but I'm just saying he reports and then he's no longer with us. So you do have to wonder. I'm not the biggest conspiracy guy. I love them. I think they're fun, but I have to have evidence. I'm more practical. But there's so many whistleblowers throughout the years that seem to go to the great beyond, and it makes you wonder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And people can do research on this. This wasn't a whistleblower, but the person that invented the hydro car, right? Which would have replaced our need for oil.
And you know, Kristin, my dad, I was born in Chicago. My dad tells a story about a guy that invented a carburetor. He said it was in the newspaper. He was from Chicago. He invented this carburetor that operated, it was hydro or water. And anyway, Dad said everybody, or, you know, like his inner circle is like, man, a car is going to get at that time. It's like 55 miles per gallon with those big block motors, which was unbelievable. Maybe 70 miles per gallon. And Dad said it just went away. So the crazy thing, my dad told me that years ago. I'm sitting here watching some kind of, I don't know, a special, you know, one of those documentaries. And they bring this guy up. And he had come down with cancer right after that and passed. And General Motors, or one of them, bought that design, whatever it was. So freaky.
Interesting. Yeah, I know. You just never know. You know, we have Goldman Sachs, TikTok. Let's go ahead. I think we can move on past different integrity failures. I mean, you can go look it up, and there's oodles of them. But, you know, the integrity vacuum I find really interesting. It's like culture collapse, and I know we're going to dive into that now. Let's be real, Ron. When integrity leaves the room, what moves in?
Yeah, and we know this. This is why we say never meet your heroes. Performative leadership, and you can. It's proven with all the great actors through the years and actresses that you can perform, and that becomes the model. I've talked to ministers who told me they've done it so long that they lose their compassion. They burn out because they're performing, and they want to do a really good sermon on Sunday. So we're all susceptible to this. And I can't say that never happened when I was Academy director. I had to play these roles. I'm at graduation, and then I'm going over to greet the students. And I remember a time thinking, what am I going to say to them that's going to sound good? Not, I'm excited to meet new officers. You see what I'm saying? It creeps in, and then it can just control you. And then there's compliance theater, where you just want to make sure there's compliance, or at least the projection of compliance, to make yourself look good, really. And then it goes into the burnout. And that's what happens when you're an empty suit, as they call it. You perform for so long that nothing means nothing. And it's just soul crushing. Right. And again, we could do we've done bore out, but we'll probably take on burnout at some point.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned don't meet your heroes. And a lot of people, if you're a fan of Julia Roberts. Yeah, Julia Roberts. I don't know why her name just fizzled out on me for a minute there. You're not going to like this. So I know. Yeah, exactly. So like that personality, like that big laugh, you know, that whole big mouth, big laugh, you know. Everyone thinks she's just like the girl next door. So I used to work and live in New York City, and my mom was visiting. She used to be a buyer. And so anyway, she was in New York City on business, and she took me to coffee. And we go down the street from my bank, and lo and behold, Julia Roberts is in front of us with a big security guard, and she's in line at Starbucks getting a drink. And New York City is really known for, people do not ask celebrities for their autograph. You actually, in New York, generally speaking, you act as if anyone that you see on the streets is just a normal, like every single person is treated the same. And that is a real thing, unlike Hollywood.
So, Kristin, that makes total sense.
So anyways,
because there wasn't a soul asked me for mine when I was in New York. So go ahead.
Yeah, so it's explained. So she's in front of me, and this poor gal, she goes and gets a napkin, and she walks up to her with a napkin and a pen, and she's like, would you, I mean, she's right in front of me. I can hear this happening. She wants her autograph, and Julia Roberts, I can watch the hand, the hand motions, like it's kind of like pushing her away with the two hands up, and she goes, let's not embarrass ourselves, shall we? And she declined the autograph. And so then the girl, she looked embarrassed and walked away, and I was like, thank God I didn't even think to do that. Like I'm not that type of person anyways, but man, that would have been embarrassing. But then I was thinking, I'm like, you're really not all that in person, lady. Yeah, she had like frizzy hair. I looked like I hadn't been combed in a few days, right? Like, so in her personality just sucked. So that was just,
what would have been so cool?
Burst
you should have went, you know what? Come here, I'll sign it. That's what you should let everyone wonder.
Oh my
Have you ever
gosh.
seen the TikTok videos where they get an entourage to follow someone and their cameras?
Oh my
and these
goodness.
people fawn all over them.
No.
They've done nothing. They're not famous, anything. And they just show how it impacts. And it's even worse now, like I said, with likes and follows. And there's TikTok people that are just bona fide celebrities. And they just started making videos from home during COVID. And they're legit.
Ron, I have seen the one where this gal slept with a guy thinking he was Willie Nelson, and it wasn't Willie Nelson. Did you see that?
On the road again.
Oh my, I mean, can you even imagine that?
I'm sorry.
I mean, shame on her, but Willie Nelson.
I saw Willie live last year.
Oh my! So
he could barely talk through but he sang one song, "Roll Me Up and Smoke Me When I'm Gone." I'm thinking, Willie, you're too close to being gone for that song. I would strike that from the playlist. But anyway,
a little on the nose there. Oh my goodness! Going back to what we're talking about here, people really just can't thrive when truth isn't safe. I know I personally don't like being in an environment where it's just niceties and falsehoods, right? Like I like to operate in a place of truth. People are going to disengage, they quit, or worse, they stay and go silent. That's part of that bore out, right? Where, or the quiet quitting or silent quitting. Remember we did an episode on that? People will do that if they feel like truth or even their opinion is not safe to share. So it's important to
This starts in elementary school. High achievers want to be challenged, and they do not. It's almost like a fish out of water. They do not do well around mediocrity. And that's the danger of school systems when they lump everyone together, and you got these gifted kids that need to be challenged, and they want to solve problems. And that follows all the way up into the work world. And people will check out if they're not challenged, especially you're bright, you're high performers. You better find ways to engage them or you're going to lose them.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I can even say that with my son. He wants to put together like any type of furniture that I ever buy that needs to be put together. He's busting into the box. He's putting it he loves it, and he does a great job at it. The problem is my daughter, she needs encouragement, and I'm trying to build her confidence, and I can do hard things. And so I asked my son, I had ordered something, and I said, please help her put this together, like lead her, teach her. And instead he just wanted to do it himself. Like it drove him crazy that he couldn't just do it. And so, he's only 11, but someone, we go 10 years from now, if they're being stifled, you're going to see, them acting out, even if it's, where they just like you disengage, or are they going to throw a fit, right? You just don't know. So it is important to know who your audience is and who you're dealing with.
It's true. And Kristin, because people have stuck with us, I do want to give them a little bit of technical expertise. In the human brain, we have the ventral striatum, and that is those people who love change. They love to go for it. They're high performers. They love to be challenged. And then you've got the dorsal striatum. That helps you build habits. It's important, but it can also keep you set in your ways. And what happens, and I help businesses do this, is when you got people who are led both in childhood. Let's pretend, Kristin, that you had a family who are always, you might be flipping houses. They might go on unique vacations. They do things, and you learn that change is a good thing. Or maybe they move around and you like it. So it builds your ventral striatum. And then you've got dorsal striatum people. They've lived in the same town. They do the same things. They come to work. They do the same thing, and they don't like change. Right. So what I do is I try to get managers to take people that are led by the ventral striatum and get them to work with the dorsal striatum people, and they can both help each other. But if you get them to lead, so you're teaching your son leadership there, but also, he's pulling her along to get her to move from dorsal over to ventricle. So, or ventral. Right. Now, I want to throw in one other element, just because you're sticking with this, people. There is we talk a lot about giving people a dopamine drizzle. Like if Kristin, you're talking about something you enjoy, you're going to get a dopamine drizzle. It makes you feel good about the conversation and in turn feel good about me. But there's a chemical called DRD4 that is usually, there's more of it in the ventral striatum people. The DRD4 is a dopamine receptor. In other words, there's a bigger opening for dopamine, which gives them a bigger high. So if I look at something in a store and it says requires some assembly, my brain tells me do not purchase. That's what my brain says. But
you need my son to
that I've got my neighbor Lisa. She's got a very high IQ, and if I get something real complicated, I will call her or my technology here, and you can tell she never gets rattled because her brain is in that ventral striatum mode, and she's going to figure this out. She's getting it done. I'm over here in dorsal striatum in that part, and I'm like, I get stressed if I have to put something together, especially for my kids when they were young, and I'd have to have something to put together, and they're waiting on it. Oh my God, was it stressful?
I know the stress.
So we're not all fun and games here, folks. We want to give you a little bit of psychology, a little bit of brain functionality to show you why people operate in certain ways. But if you can get those two people work together like you're doing, Kristin, that was brilliant to get your son to help, because they're both growing from that, is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, thank you. Absolutely. I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, he threw an absolute fit, but that doesn't deter me because I know it was the right leadership move. And then leaders need to be able to teach, right? And that's like the true way to hone. And patience comes along with it, right? Because that's not her forte. So, but yeah, it didn't go over so well, but that's the first of many. He just doesn't know it yet. There's hidden powers of integrity, and we'll close with this, Ron, but let's just pivot into this. We want to talk about the leaders who get it right? The ones who lead with integrity, not just slogans.
Yeah, and we'll cover these quickly because they're pretty self-explanatory. Yeah. But this is a big one, is you make decisions without fear. And that means everybody's not going to love you. You do what's right because it's right, and you block out all the other noise. They apologize fast, but move on. Don't grovel. Make your apology and move on. If you sit around, beat yourself up, it shows weakness. It doesn't help anyone. They price integrity into every situation. This was in my book, Kristin, about a vision statement. And I used the bulletproof vest, and I've already mentioned one other episode. So just in case you've been with us the whole time, I'll be brief. But the vision statement was to make the best brake pads in the world. It uses Kevlar. That's the material in ballistic vests. So let's say you have an employee that comes to you, Kristin, you're the CEO, and they say, hey, we can save a lot of money by using this other substance to make our brake pads instead of Kevlar. Then if you have integrity, you're going to look at that vision statement. It says we make the best brakes, not semi, not maybe. We make the best brakes. So you reject that cheaper substance. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. They price integrity. Yes. It's in their vision statement, and it is in the fabric of the company from there on.
Yes. I mean, selling out is not on the table for those folks. It's sad though. That's becoming increasingly rare. We see, even like, oh my gosh, my favorite apple cider vinegar that was bought was Bragg's, right? Bragg's was bought by another company. And then now the recipe is watered down and doesn't have anywhere near the same health benefits that it once did. So a lot of companies, they lack integrity, quite frankly. We see it every day. When we're thinking about leaders that did it right, to get back on that, they are creating a psychological safety net or a safety environment on purpose, because you get rewarded for honesty in this environment, even the uncomfortable kind. And for those who don't know, when you live and operate from a place of truth, that is going to be uncomfortable at one point or another, because the truth is not always something that someone wants to hear about themselves.
I had someone once, Kristin, they went to a training and they said, you got to have psychological safety for your employees. And this person said they really loved it until they realized what that meant. That meant you entertain people who disagree, the contrarians get to speak up, and then it's not so comfortable. So any manager that shuts down any opposition, it's, they're going to hurt morale. It's never going to go anywhere.
Yeah. It has to be done respectfully.
No,
though,
it's true.
Right?
There's
the
a
right
two-way
forum.
street on that for sure.
Yeah. I had an employee that would bring up concerns, but they would only do it when we were in a big meeting with my boss. So the boss's boss. And that really chapped my hide, because that was very inappropriate. And I even called them out in the meeting, like, why did you find this to be the appropriate forum when you have weekly meetings with me as a team and one-on-ones every single week? So yeah, I thought they were going to look, pretty hot there, and they ended up looking
the true
bad.
definition, I think, of psychological safety would just be you feel safe in providing a differing opinion to your manager, but of course it should be done respect. I tell everyone, never embarrass your manager in a public setting. No. It's going to ruin you. They separate facts from stories. That's so important, because gossip and all this stuff can come in. You got to sift through all that, get to the facts. They admit knowledge gaps. You should have SMEs or subject matter experts around you, and you have to rely on them to help you.
Yeah, I have to say, when you admit that you don't know something, that is so powerful. It's not a weakness. And I used to watch, as a bank manager, I would watch my employees. Some of them would try to fudge through an answer, and I would watch the client's face, and they knew it. And they started looking for me, like, where's the manager, right? And I would come over and I would say, oh, actually, it's actually not, that's not quite it. Let me get you the answer. And I would go to my employee. You can say, I'm not sure, but I will find you the answer.
Exactly.
Like, they know you're full of SH when you are lying to their face. It's not a good look.
I love the next one. They're the same in private as in public. We already told you Kristin told you the Julia Roberts story. But these people are consistent. A lot of times I do post myself working out sometimes, especially I did my 5-pound weight running on the treadmill, which is very difficult. It took me a long time to master.
That's hard.
But I did that partially because of some people that I'm coaching. I'm pushing them to keep a consistent workout routine. So occasionally I'll pop on a workout to show that's not talk for me. That's a part of my life. Fitness is a part of my life.
Right. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Put your money where your mouth is, right? Like, that's just what it's about. A lot of people
But you certainly could sit behind a microphone and be performative and tell other people to work out. And when you eat McDonald's fries every day, I mean, it can.
Exactly. Oh, and that's something, Ron, like, we talk about, like, combined, we have over 50 years of leadership, real leadership experience between the two of us. And we've led teams to deliver. And the difference is there are so many people that put a microphone in front of them and they want to tell you that they're a leader and here's how to be a leader, but they haven't ever led somebody. And that's a concern. So I think that's what you get out of this podcast, is people that have actually walk the walk, and we're talking the talk here.
Yeah, and I have to swallow my pride. I do, as you can imagine, I get a lot of advice from leaders and from self-proclaimed leaders, and I have to, usually I just say, that's cool, thanks for sharing, and it's getting to the point everybody wants to share leadership stuff, and it's mostly stuff I've already seen, so that gets a little difficult to sift through. This is big for me, Kristin, and this comes up in coaching. They honor micro promises. So if I tell you something small, like I'm going to call you back, that may not be a big deal to me. It might be to you. But if you can get to the point, like most people honor big promises, like you get paid every 2 weeks, you're going to get that. But it's the micro promises, even micro expressions in body language that gets us in trouble. If you, no matter how small it is or unimportant to you, if you tell that person, I will check on you or I'll check the status of this, do it. If you have to mark it in a calendar, because those micro promises help. It threads trust with your employees.
Yeah. And I'm going to fully admit, early on in my leadership career, there would be times where I would put a one-on-one on the calendar. Like for certain people, especially that were like needing the extra push, I would do 3 a week. That's a lot, actually, especially when you have multiple employees. And so on occasion, I would cancel one of the one-on-ones and not thinking anything of it, because I'm like, we do 3 a week. What's 1 out of 3, right? But then what it does, they don't trust you. Basically, they're going to say, hey, is she going to show? Are we still going to have this meeting? Right? Like, you don't want to do that. So really consider, yes, as much as it might seem like something small to you, it's not for the person on the receiving end.
One of the dumbest things I ever did, and I did a lot when I first started, was canceling meetings. Like even a staff meeting, and I thought I was doing everyone a favor, because let's say the top 3 issues for the meeting, one of them got solved already, so I'd be like, I'll just do an email. And then someone come to me and is like, I set my calendar for this meeting and you've canceled 2, and I was like, that's I have to stick with those meetings. This next one also, the last 2 probably rung more true for me. That's the micro promises, but also enforcing standards consistently. And I've seen so much, I call it managing personality-based management versus policy-based management. And if they like someone better, or if they have someone that's overbearing and they're afraid to go against the grain, they'll let them do something that they wouldn't let the normal person do. You're right, it is performative, and that creates this toxic environment, because it just filters down. They don't trust manager, then they don't trust each other. Jealousy comes in, and it's like a cancer. It just spreads.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to admit this. I'm embarrassed to admit this one. But, I love to be entertained. And I had an employee once who just made me laugh, made me feel like I was at home. She was the one that would, decorate for every single holiday, our cube farm area. And I let her get away with more than I let the others get away with. And I ended up apologizing to the team for that. And that does happen, and you have to check yourself, just because they make you feel, warm and fuzzy, because it's like, that's somebody that I'd be friends with them outside of here. Right. But that doesn't give them that VIP
I'm going to make you feel better. I had a leader tell me one time they don't have favorites. I said, that's a total lie. You have favorites. You don't show the favoritism. And this person had to think about it. I said, name someone that you enjoy being around, and they did. So they admitted, I guess I do have favorites. You just don't show that. And I had the same thing as you, Kristin, just to piggyback on that. I had a guy that made me laugh all the time, and I realized that even make it like, I did a weekly newsletter and we had picture of the week. He was in there probably 5 times in a year, and other people saw that as favoritism. So I had to be careful, even though I was making fun of him sometimes. He was in an orange raincoat and he looked so funny that I put it in there. So anyway, man, this has been fun. I feel like I decompressed a little bit.
You have to take inventory. I know, right? It's like therapy.
It is.
It literally is. When you have employees, it's like, I remember, of course, this is embarrassing also, but I remember like the presents under the Christmas tree when I was young. I would count to see if my sister had more than me. And then if she did, I would bring it up with my parents. Like, why does Kelsey have 9 and I have 7? I'm older. Like, what's the problem here? And they'd be like, well, we probably spent more on you, but you have, and so I was that petty. But when you have employees, you have to almost think that way. Like, you have to, okay, I've shared John's picture 4 times. Mary's only had 2. Okay, I need to even that out, right? Like, so, you do have to think that way.
It's equity. And unfortunately, the word equity got hijacked with DEI, but you do have to be equitable with your employees, and because they see it, they're watching. Kristin, I'm gonna say this. You have been very vulnerable in this podcast, and folks, Kristin had no idea that this came up, but I was listening to a leadership podcast, would never mention the name. And they had the ultimate supreme expert that apparently had never made a mistake. I'm working out. I have to turn it off and go back to my Irish rock because I got frustrated. I'm like, are you kidding me? They made it sound like if you do A, B, and C, you will never have a problem in your organization. They had all the answers, and it pissed me off to the point I'm just like, thank God we're at least open and honest about our failures. And because I'd love to have thrown a few what ifs at those people, but that's what I see. But it did inspire me to keep going. Let's look at the good, bad, and the ugly, or the dirty side of leadership, and let's take it on.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I love that about us, because that's how both of us operate, from a place of truth and honesty and vulnerability, quite frankly. And I'll just end with one thing. I watched this gal, Instagram Reels come up, and once in a great while I will listen to the full video. And this lady was basically saying, here's 3 things that make someone instantly likable. And it was basically like being relatable. But that takes authenticity, right? Like, you have to be authentic and go below the surface. And then it was like smiling, and like the smile and nod, the open aura. And then the other thing was, and it's the open palm. So if you show an open palm, like a wave, I sometimes do a double wave when I walk into a room, if I know people. I know that sounds a little weird, but if you've ever seen 8 Seconds, the bull rider, he did a double arm wave, and I always love that, so I kind of copy that. But something with that open palm, it makes you vulnerable, and it sends a message to whomever is around you that you are open to conversation. And
Kristin, you're getting over in my training program. Hey, I teach the delayed smile.
Too bad I don't live closer. Oh yeah,
you wait. You don't smile before you
that.
meet them. You wait until you can see their eyes. Then you smile. It tells their brain that they put the smile on your face. So it's really cool. Warm, close cues, all of that stuff. We get into it in the training.
I love it.
So Kristin, I think in a nutshell, what we're saying is you don't have to be a saint. You need to be solid. You need to be predictable, trustworthy. You're going to make mistakes, but if your integrity is in check, you'll be able to weather any storm. And people will pick up on that. And that old adage, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's so true.
Right. All right. I love it. All right, folks, be the leader you were meant to be.
Wait, how did you get to do that?
I was like,
here we go. We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.